All right, so here's our agenda. We're going to discuss about why LPM, and what you're seeing on the right is we've shaded out the bottom part, and the top part is where we consider to be portfolio management and SAFE. Then we'll discuss key LPM responsibilities, sync on what a SAFE portfolio is. And then the real meat of the presentation is the 5 things successful enterprises do to adopt LPM. And these are things that Chris and I have found to be successful at many different organizations. And we hope that you will find them to be helpful in your LPM adoption. So one of the reasons we want to look at why LPM, and I'm finding that more and more organizations have these similar challenges. For example, their agility is limited by annual planning, project cost accounting, and inflexible budgets where they do annual budgeting and you can't adjust the budget. A continuous overload of demand. There is always more things in the funnel than there is possibility to do all that work. I think one of the most important things here is there's the gap between the strategic goals of leaders and the bottom-up execution of teams. We really want to have good strategy aligned with execution. The other thing that causes large delays is that there's overly detailed business cases that have lots of assumptions, and the forecasted cost and benefits are rarely on target. So we're spending a lot of time on these business cases, not lean business cases. We'll talk about that later. Spend a lot of time on business cases, but we're really not getting the value of those business cases when our costs and assumptions and our benefits are not on target. We also do big upfront bets on large projects because of the project model, and that often results in developing solutions that don't really provide the intended benefits. And then finally, what I find is many organizations confuse output and outcomes. Outputs are things like features and stories that we develop, and the outcomes are the business outcomes that occur as a result of those outputs. So sometimes features result in a business result, and sometimes they don't. So we can't equate features to business outcomes. So we're just going to go briefly over the key responsibilities of LPM. And if you're interested in diving deeper on this, we'll talk to you about a class that I'm conducting shortly, and you can sign up for it. We'll provide you the link. So the responsibilities of LPM fall along the lines of 3 dimensions: strategy and investment funding, agile portfolio operations, and lean governance. And you see here that the responsibilities of strategy and investment funding is both on the left and right of the triangle. So this is probably the most important area of lean portfolio management, from establishing budgets and guardrails to ensuring that we have a good, fast portfolio through the Kanban system that is not having delays. And then the other thing is connecting the portfolio to the enterprise strategy and maintaining a portfolio vision. And so we can figure out how to realize that vision. After we do that, we develop epics, which will help us get from the current state to the future state. That's one of the key differences between project portfolio management and lean portfolio management. With project portfolio management, we're selecting amongst the best projects, but selecting amongst the best projects doesn't always result in getting us from our current state to the desired future state. Then you see agile portfolio operations, coordinating of value streams. This is a bit more tactical, supporting art execution and fostering operational excellence. And then finally, lean governance. This is where we do things like participatory budgeting to forecast and budget dynamically. Try setting that 3 times fast. We'll also measure portfolio performance and coordinate continuous compliance. We don't want that happening at the very end because that will cause delays in value delivery. So what exactly is a safe portfolio? I get that question many times. And today, we define a safe portfolio as a set of related development value streams that organize their teams and their arts around the products and services that the business develops for a particular business area. And these development value streams are providing the solutions which are sold by operational value streams. So I'm not going to go into the difference between those two in this webinar, but in our class, we certainly shall. So each value stream within the portfolio, they build, they support, and they maintain solutions for internal or external customers. And the portfolio also ensures that we're making investments in the right things with the right level of investment to meet the portfolio's strategic objectives. That's one of the most important aspects of portfolio management, is ensuring that we can get from the current state to the future state. Now we're going to start going over 5 successful things enterprises do to adopt lean portfolio management. The first is adopting and improving LPM practices early in the safe implementation. In the past, the safe implementation roadmap recommended that was done towards the end of the roadmap after you have launched a few trains. However, what we found is there's a great deal of benefit to starting that early, and we'll go over that more. We also need to move from the project model to the product model in order to ensure that we don't have delays in getting the project started or delays in completing the work. We also want to optimize the flow of work coming into the portfolio so that it can go through the Kanban as quickly as possible. And also at the same time, anything that comes into the funnel that really doesn't belong there, we don't want to spend a lot of effort on that. So we want to get those out of the Kanban as soon as possible. And then we want to measure outcomes over outputs so that we're really understanding if we're moving the needle in the business. And then finally, we want to use the LPM adoption roadmap to adopt and improve our practices. So we'll start early in the safe implementation, adopting LPM, but we're really going to evolve that and perfect that throughout the safe implementation. Chris, you're going to take us through the next slides?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. We're going to go through each of these 5 in a little bit more detail and share more why it's important and give you some more specifics around things that you can consider in your organization. So the first one, adopt and improve LPM practices early in the safe implementation. As Richard said, this is one of the things that's recently changed in the new version of Scaled Agile Framework. We're looking at the safe implementation roadmap here on this screen. And the safe implementation roadmap gives a high-level overview of the process that we go through for introducing leadership to what Scaled Agile Framework is, how we train people, how we build alignment around it, right? And this is following Kotter's 8-step model to leading change. So lean portfolio management has been on the roadmap, but it used to only be there at the end, the enhance the portfolio. And recently, the LPM was moved earlier in the process, right up there to train executive managers and leaders. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is it's really effective. It really accelerates the transformation when we have leaders leading with the way that they work, not just leaders saying we support the way that teams should work or that Agile release trains should work. And in past years, in the earlier development of Agile and Scaled Agile Framework, there was often this kind of thought that we needed to prove that Agile worked, right? We needed to launch some trains, we needed to get some teams going, and then we'd eventually get to a place where the need for lean portfolio management was recognized. And the problem with that is that that means that you're really extending the period of time that your teams are trying to work in an agile way, but your leadership is continuing to work in the old traditional way. And that's a recipe for creating friction, right? We're doing strategic planning, we're doing budgeting in a traditional project-based way of working, and trying to feed that to agile teams. And that's just a recipe for confusion and conflict and lack of alignment throughout the organization. So if we move that earlier and we get leadership changing the way that they think, the way that they work, and improving the strategic planning and budgeting process, then it makes everything easier after that, and it's going to flow much more smoothly. So let's talk about how does that work. So in SAFe, there's two implementation roadmaps. One is that high-level implementation roadmap that we just saw, and the other is an LPM implementation roadmap. And what we're looking at here is the implementation roadmap that is the foundation of the lean portfolio management class that Richard has mentioned. So what we do in that class is explain in more detail what LPM is, lay out what a good implementation looks like, and then do a workshop with the leaders that have attended that training to create a roadmap of how are we going to adopt LPM in this organization, who are the people, what are the processes that need to change, what tooling do we need. And as you can see here, the LPM roadmap starts with aligning leadership, organizing the organization around value, and then flowing through the LPM process of how we create a strategy, how we flow that strategy into our value streams, into our agile release trains, and then how we provide the governance to ensure that that implementation is really happening the way we want it to. We're doing retrospectives, we're doing measures and grow, and we're improving as an organization. So this LPM roadmap is a really powerful tool to getting leadership aligned around what they need to do to change the way that they're doing strategic planning and budgeting, so that they can provide the guidance to the rest of the organization around the priority and the agile ways of working at the team level.
So I just want to point something out. So we have these rounded rectangles around some of the items on the portfolio roadmap. And these are things that are good to do at the very beginning of your SAFe implementation while you're launching trains. So sometimes you can't get executives in the beginning, so you may have a PMO or a LACE who can begin those 5 activities, so that this way you're beginning your LPM journey early, getting it all set up, and then involving the leaders subsequently to that.
Yeah, and that role of the PMO and of leadership is going to be really important to both the success of your LPM implementation, as well as the success of the overall SAFe implementation. And we'll talk about the role of transforming a PMO and some options for what the future state will look like for a value management office that can really power your LPM implementation. So when we think about the leadership team, or we think about the PMO or an agile PMO or a VMO, we need to think about an agile team at this level. So when we talk about scaling agile, it's not just about getting development teams working together or getting agile release trains working together. It's really scaling the mindset and scaling the way that we work to our leadership teams. So here we're giving you an example of a C-suite level agile team working together to support the LACE, to support the VMO and the lean portfolio management function to drive not only the agile transformation, but to drive the strategic planning and budgeting process for the future of the organization. And when you think about the C-suite of a company, what is that? It's really a cross-functional organization, right? It's a cross-functional team of leaders that's responsible for the functioning of the entire company. So when we think about your chief financial officer, your chief marketing officer, your CIO, your CTO, security, all right, all of those roles are working together to define both the future strategy of the organization, as well as to guide the work and the implementation, and if we don't have alignment around what the vision of the future looks like at the C-suite level, we're not going to have alignment with their direct reports. And if we don't have alignment with their direct reports, we're not going to have alignment with the teams doing the work, either in our operational value streams or in our development value streams. We're going to have teams going in different directions if we don't have that alignment starting at the top. Best way to get the alignment at the top is by having a high functioning agile team at our leadership level. And here we're giving you the example of a C-suite level leadership team. This could also be a line of business leadership team. It could be, at the development portfolio level, right? We can think about agile leadership teams at multiple levels within the organization. But a good agile team is cross-functional, and it also uses good agile best practices and has things like a product owner, has things like a scrum master, has things like a coach, right? So if we need coaching at our team level and at our agile release train level, we also need coaches for our leadership teams and for our VMO and for our lean portfolio management team. So we mentioned this concept of a VMO, or transitioning from a project management office to a newer, more modern value management office. One of the challenges of that kind of past approach of waiting until fairly far into the safe implementation to introduce lean portfolio management was it often meant that a PMO exists throughout that entire time, continuing to try to manage projects in the traditional way while you have agile release trains and teams trying to execute the work and the vision for the future and the design thinking in an agile way. And that creates conflict in an organization. And it often kind of, gave rise to an us versus them camp, which isn't healthy for the organization. So what we want to encourage in today's world is the PMO leading the way of modernizing and transitioning away from an organization that's putting together reports or staffing plans or estimating projects and moving to something that's really focused on what's the value that we're delivering, what's the goals that we're trying to accomplish, and how do we prioritize at a strategic level so that we can feed that priority down to our agile release trains, right? So a VMO, or what you might hear as an agile project management office or an adaptive project management office, is an organization that uses agile and value stream management principles to define what our strategy is, create the strategic themes, create the high-level epics so that those can be consumed by our development value streams and executed on. The VMO also facilitates the process of the lean portfolio management function, running and facilitating safe events, leading strategic planning sessions, doing lean budgeting, participatory budgeting, our portfolio syncs, and those sorts of things. And all of that fosters a culture of decentralized decision making, right? That we're making things more consumable, we're making decisions at the right level and providing guidelines for when does the VMO need to weigh in on things, when does senior leadership need to be involved in the strategic planning process, and when can those decisions be decentralized and move faster through our system by empowering people at the Agile release train level or at the team level to make those decisions. And all of that helps us create a more flow-based system that allows us to continually evaluate both what we should be doing and what we're actually doing, and make adjustments to measure and grow assessments, learn and adjust, and incorporate those adjustments into the next wave of our planning. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Richard to talk about number 2.
Thank you, Chris. So now we want to talk about one of the most important aspects of shifting to lean portfolio management. And that is the need to go from managing work in projects to moving to a product model. You may have read this book, From Project to Product by Mick Kirstein. I highly recommend it. And in his book, he talks about a number of scenarios about the importance of flow, and he provides a whole flow framework to measure how quickly value flows throughout the portfolio. As you know, in traditional approach, people are organized in functional silos and temporary project teams, and it's very hard to bring work across those portfolios. Working in silos. Working in silos really inhibits agility. Every time that there's a handoff from one silo to the other, there's usually quite a bit of delay. So we want to move to organizing people in value streams, in cross-functional teams, and art that uses a continuous flow model. The project cost accounting model often inhibits agility as well due to its annual planning, and also just getting the people together to start a project requires people from many cost centers, and getting the project started often takes 2 or 3 months. And along with the same project model, you typically have big upfront annual planning and budgeting. And it makes it very difficult to adapt when that is kind of fixed. Often that budget is created the year before, and all the projects that we want to do in the following year are identified up front. The other thing that you'll often see is that the portfolio is used as a central intake for all work, and not just project work, but perhaps features and other lower level work. We want our executives focused on strategic themes and looking at the demand which helps us achieve those strategic themes. The other big problem is overly detailed business cases, which are based on assumptions, and the fact that projects are often governed using phase gates, which inhibit agility. They often cause people to work in a waterfall way, because in order to get from one phase to the other, you have to sign off for it on each phase. Now, contrast that to what you're seeing in a lean agile approach. We're using lean business cases, 2 or 3 pages. We're going to outline an MVP, define a business outcome hypothesis, and use agile forecasting and estimating methods. And we are going to use a range of estimates. We're not going to say it's $2 million. We might say it's between X amount of money and Y amount of money, and it may take between X and Y amount of time. However, the goal isn't to complete all the features from an epic. It's just to implement the most valuable features from that epic. So we often find that just by implementing 20% of the features in an epic, we get 80% of the value. So this is an example of organizing the portfolio around value, meaning that the value streams contain arts, which develop the products and services used by internal or external customers. And when we reorganize into value streams and arts, those are virtual organizations. It doesn't require an HR reorganization, all the overhead that's involved with that, and the trauma of moving people from one functional manager to another functional manager, and also the concerns of functional managers that I don't have the same people reporting to me. What is my role now? So we keep the same functional manager, but their role does change to more of a coach to their staff and to help them continually grow and adopt new practices. This enables long-lived cross-functional agile teams and arts. Without organizing the portfolio around value streams, it's very difficult to have stable agile teams and arts, because at the end of a project, normally the team disbands and they move on to another initiative. In this model, as long as that product or service exists, that agile release train and value stream will also exist, providing that stability. The other thing that we want to do is to implement a dual operating system. And what we mean by that is many organizations have a traditional hierarchy. And so you have a functional organization, perhaps one for developers, another one for testers, another one for QA people, business analysts, and so on. Well, work doesn't move through those silos very quickly. Instead, by organizing in a value stream network with cross-functional arts and cross-functional teams, which specifically develop products and services, we can move much faster. So what we're trying to do is we don't want to throw out the traditional hierarchy because it still has many benefits. It provides the stability that the organization needs, and it also helps keep those processes that have been successful in place. Now, this is where functional managers can help start eliminating those processes which are inhibiting agility. And the goal is that we can also have a group of people, which is SAFE provides the value stream network, where we can move much faster, like we did when there was a startup. And that's what you're seeing with those circles there, when anyone could speak to anyone and things would move much quicker. The other thing is we want to move to a continuous delivery model. There's often a start and stop to projects. We can only start a project once we formed a project team, and that's until we have gotten people from different cost centers and have gotten that budget approval. Before you know it, before people are actually assigned to working on the project, 2 or 3 months has gone by. Compare that to organizing in arts and value streams, where we move the work to the people instead of moving people to the work. So it's a much better model. And again, it enables stable, long-lived teams within the value streams and arts. The other thing that you're seeing here on this screen is the business agility value stream. And it shows how we go from sensing an opportunity all the way to delivering that value and learning and adapting. So this would be an interesting article for you to read or to learn about in the LPM course. During the transition, we also want to make our traditional projects visible to everyone, because it does take capacity, and we want to make sure that we're working on the right things. And often the projects that we're working on are not aligned with the strategic themes. So if we put them in a portfolio Kanban, at least they get visibility, even though their process will be different. Chris, can you pick up on optimizing portfolio flow?
And that's really a direct lead in from the value stream continuous delivery way of thinking is based on the continuous delivery of value, and thinking about that not just from a development perspective, but thinking about it from an organizational perspective. Right? So We want to optimize flow throughout our entire organization, from the idea through the implementation, through the benefit that we're providing. So this is one of the changes in the new version of Scaled Agile framework is putting more of a focus on flow. The concepts have always been there, but really simplifying the principles and putting the focus on flow. And here's a definition of flow from Scaled Agile framework. Flow occurs when there is a smooth, linear, and fast movement of work product through the steps in a value stream. Right? So we want to eliminate handoffs, we want to eliminate delays, and we want to make good, high quality, valuable work flow through our system without interruption. So this concept is an agile concept, it's a lean concept, but when we put it together with really thinking about it across our organization, what we're talking about is value stream management. We're talking about how do we optimize the entire value stream that's involved in delivering something of value to our customers or to our users. And value stream management takes the concepts of continuous delivery to a broader way of thinking throughout our organization. So it's not just the technical steps that we need to do to automate a DevOps pipeline. It's all of the business functions. It's all of the strategic planning and budgeting and prioritization, as well as both development and operational value streams that go into providing what our customers want or the value that our customers are getting. So in the lean portfolio management, we're now putting more focus on this concept of value stream management, spanning the entire portfolio and thinking about the delays that are in our system, not just from a development perspective, but also business and operational delays. We're all now also calling out 8 specific flow accelerators, and those flow accelerators exist throughout SAFe and at multiple levels throughout SAFe. The concepts here are not new, right? We've had visualizing and limiting work in process and minimizing handoff and dependencies as fundamental aspects of Scaled Agile framework for a long time, but we're highlighting them here as the key is to accelerate your value streams and accelerate the flow of value through your lean portfolio management system. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail around each one of these flow accelerators. For sake of time, we go into more detail in the classes and the lean portfolio management class that Richard's teaching in a couple of weeks. But you can see these 8 items are things that are bringing us to a modern way of working, right? Visualizing and limiting work in process, core lean concept that helps us really focus on the highest priority, most valuable things, addressing bottlenecks, what's slowing us down, where are inefficiencies in the system, and focus on those inefficiencies, focus on the things that are inhibiting flow, eliminate those bottlenecks through our inspect and adapt activities, through our retrospectives, through the metrics that we're gathering, solve that bottleneck, and then there'll be a new bottleneck, move on to that next bottleneck. Minimizing.
You know, let me pointing out one thing. What is new is that we've renamed principle number 6 to make flat value flow without interruption. And the number 8 there, remediate legacy policies and practices, has been added. And perhaps you can fill us in about that.
Yeah. So thanks for calling that out. We'll get to remediating legacy problems. With number 3, minimizing dependencies and handoffs gets to how we organize our teams. And as Richard talked about with the dual operating system and organizing around value is the way that we minimize dependencies, which allows us to develop faster, get faster feedback, and focus on working in smaller batches and smaller queue lengths. As Richard said, 2 new things that are here: optimizing time in the zone and remediate legacy policies and practices. Optimizing time in zone allows our teams to focus on value delivery, remove distractions, remove inefficiencies in the system. And those distractions and inefficiencies in the systems are often legacy practices that are hanging around, meetings that no longer serve a function or are duplicative, review processes that slow down the process and also don't encourage decentralized decision-making, and any number of other kind of legacy baggage that may be built into your policies, procedures, the ways teams are organized, the way code is being developed and reviewed, right? All of those things are things that we need to evaluate and not just continue to work in the old way that we work and then come and lay safe on top of it and rename things while allowing those inefficient legacy practices to continue. With that, we're going to hand it back over to you, Richard.
Yeah, so the next thing we want to talk about is measuring outcomes over outputs. And as I said, many organizations confuse the two. And if you're not focusing on outcomes and just on outputs, you're really not going to deliver more value flow. In fact, I find many organizations have become feature factories where we've gotten really good at knocking out features quickly. But do we know if any of those features are actually delivering value? Do we actually even know, has anyone even found a new feature? Did the features result in higher customer satisfaction? Did they result in change in buyer behavior? And if we don't look at that, then why are we creating that work if we're not really measuring those business outcomes? So in SAFE, we have a whole bunch of metrics which talk about those outcomes. In fact, it's part of the SAFE metrics model, which is now called Measure and Grow. And it really has 3 parts to it. Does our portfolio meet the needs of the customers and the business? So we will be looking at business outcomes, flow, or is the work moving fast throughout the portfolio, from the top of the portfolio all the way down through the teams? And how competently are we doing our work? Are we achieving business agility? Are we doing the right behaviors and practices for lean portfolio management? Or if we're working on an ART or we're an RTE, how are we aligning with those practices and mindsets? We want to measure that so that we can improve that. And LPM has some responsibility to ensure that we share good patterns across the portfolio so that another ART or even another portfolio can improve based upon what we've learned from those existing ARTs. So here's an example of business outcomes. So you might be familiar with pirate metrics, or it's the acquisition and my screen's being blocked here. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. So acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, and referral. The other thing that we want to look at is our metrics regarding our fulfillment. If we're doing consumer loans, as an example, or we're an auto store, what is the conversion rate for people purchasing our products? How long does it take to make a decision? What is our net promoter score? What is our customer lifetime value? That's really measuring business outcomes. And then we also want to look at customer support. What is our outstanding tickets? Are our customers satisfied? Do we take care of most problems on the first call? What is our mean time to resolution, and so on? If you were in manufacturing, you'll be looking at things like units sold, cost of goods, inventory turns, and the concept to cash cycle time. Again, we can't just look at outputs, and most developers are not necessarily versed in this language. And I think one of the most important things that we can do in value stream management is also to encourage developers to understand how their contributions affect the business. And by them looking at the business outcomes and also being involved in how we measure those outcomes, they start to become more interested in the work that they're doing, and it also unlocks their intrinsic motivation as they see that their work directly moves the needle in the business. Now, there are some things that are not easily measured, like how well are we doing on our strategy? So for that, we'll use OKRs to define the objectives and key results. And typically, we'll use those for strategic themes. We can also apply those to epics, and we can also apply them to understand how well are we meeting the business objectives of the transformation. The next thing we want to look at is measuring flow. And in Mick Kirsten's book, Project to Product, he defines a bunch of metrics, flow metrics, which a lot of them have been around, but I think he did a really good job in packaging them together and explaining them and how they apply specifically to value streams. So we don't have time to get into each one of these metrics, but if you go into the metrics article, you'll see these different metrics and how they are applied. You might know flow time as the lead time. You might know flow efficiency is very similar to tracking how much process time there is versus waiting time. And so those are really important metrics. And then the very last metric there, flow predictability, is something that's specific to SAFe and not part of Mick Kirsten's flow framework. And this is it used to be called the program predictability metric. It's now called the R predictability metric. And we can understand how predictable is our train in delivering value. And we can even roll those numbers up to an ART, to a value stream, and even to the portfolio level.
And
Chris, you
so
want to pick this one?
that brings us to kind of our wrap up here. And so we're going to leave you with principle number 5 as using the LPM adoption roadmap to drive the improvement. So we already talked about the implementation roadmap and kind of the components of it and why it's important. And we at Agile Rising believe that this is a very powerful tool for our customers. And we start the LPM journey by training leadership, going through the lean portfolio management class, either as a public open enrollment class like Richard's teaching in a couple of weeks, or as a private class specifically for leadership within an organization, and follow that with the LPM Getting Started workshop. And that's a one-day follow-on to the class where we build out the implementation roadmap, and we create a high-level initial, right? There's only so much work you can do in one day around this, but what we can do is create the roadmap for who needs to be involved, what's the high level timeline, what follow-ups do we need in order to align the leadership around implementing LPM, and then all of the organization and strategic and operational and governance items that need to eventually be put into place. That roadmap is, generally speaking, a multi-PI roadmap in order to implement all of the practices, get things in place, that's running in parallel with the implementation roadmap for launching Agile release trains and launching teams. So leaders come out of that workshop aligned around the path forward and with a really clear path forward on what needs to be done in order to start making the changes. And what we'll often do as part of that workshop is also kind of leave with agreement on the cadence of events. When is that Lean Agile Center of Excellence and the executive leadership team and the VMO, what meetings are they going to have? What ceremonies and events are they going to use to move forward the implementation roadmap, as well as move forward the activities of the Lean portfolio management implementation? So being educated in a class is very valuable. It's even more valuable when it's paired with a workshop or a series of workshops that follow it, that take what's been learned and turn it into an actionable plan for the organization. Some other tools that are available to you in the SAFE community is the LPM practice guide, which is available in SAFE Studio. And SAFE Studio is available to anyone who has taken the Lean portfolio management class or who has one of the other SAFE certifications like SPC, or an organization that has SAFE Enterprise, the SAFE Enterprise subscription, or SES. In that LPM practice guide are a series of videos, articles, as well as the roadmap that we just showed you, and templates for that roadmap that can help you align your organization to thinking about what it would take to implement LPM. So if you have access to SAFE Studio, recommend you go out and check out the LPM practice guide. If you don't have access to SAFE Studio, recommend you take Richard's class, because you'll get access to SAFE Studio after that class, or talk to us about getting a SAFE Enterprise subscription for your organization. And that concludes our talk today. I'll turn it over to Russ to wrap things up.
Thanks, Chris. And I have to say that was just a fantastic pirate impression from Richard. And if anyone's interested in maybe hearing more of that and learning more about LPM, we have a course coming up May 11th and 12th, and the first 15 people to respond will receive a 15% discount on the course. So Julie will send the link out to everybody. And if you're interested, please feel free to register. And I'm sure it's going to be a great course taught by the person that created the course himself. So, and then I think we wanted to go to one more thing and just talk about maybe some incremental help that we can provide. Next slide, please. There we go. So one of the things that we saw a need for is it's not always necessary to have a large engagement to help organization through some challenging times. So we have a micro consulting offering that allows us to provide just-in-time coaching, advisory services to organizations that really helps them pass certain challenges. So if you're interested in learning more about LPM, maybe walking through some of the things, but don't really want a large engagement, this is a really easy way to do that. the LPM workshop can be part of this. Also, the workshops you see here, value stream management, Lean Agile Center of Excellence. So if there's interest there, please feel free to reach out, and we can certainly talk to you about those and set some time up to walk through your needs and how we can help.
And I
With
just
that, I
want to
wanna-
mention that Chris has experience with technology business management. He can actually teach the course for that. And if you haven't looked at technology business management, I suggest you do, because one of the important things is to understand how much money are we spending in our organization across different business units, across value streams, across arts, and really understanding, are we getting our value from the money? So Chris is a certified instructor in that, and I really encourage you to look it up. You can go to tbm.org to find out more about it.
And we're seeing lots of interest in TBM plus Agile because LPM is really bridging the financial aspects of how we develop new products in an agile way. And TBM is really focused on finance. LPM is really focused on the strategic budgeting and planning processes. And the thing that we really don't like to see in organizations is where there's one group implementing TBM and another group implementing Agile, and they're not working together and implementing it as one consolidated change management approach. Right. And with that, I think we're going to move on to the last couple of minutes that we have together and do some question and answer.
All right, let's see. Is there an RACI for Agile executive teams in developing and maintaining the LPM?
Yes, so there really isn't a RACI matrix for the Agile executive team. In fact, we don't typically use RACI matrices within SAFE and also in the general Agile community. Not that they're bad, but we really want to have the collaboration. And what I found over the years is that when you have a RACI matrix, everyone is worried about staying within their swim lane and not going outside those boundaries. And it kind of inhibits collaboration. Chris, would you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so while we don't use traditional RACIs for the reasons that Richard just outlined, we do have some job aids that can help provide guidance to people in different roles, really at all levels of SAFE, that and can to some extent provide some guidance on responsibilities for each one of those roles. Even more so, talk about the key collaborations that they have and the kind of skills that we're looking for. So we have some well-formatted job aids that we use as part of our coaching with customers. But when you're talking about a cross-functional team where we want everybody to work together, we don't want to be kind of reinforcing silos and just kind of throwing things over the wall from a responsibility perspective.
There's a couple more questions out there. So Vanilla asks, so when we think about kind of the, some questions around the high level value stream budgeting and changing the mindset of leaders. And then when we think about, funding projects, right? What's the change management approach or path for that? Any thoughts on that, Richard or Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, and that's probably one of the harder things to do is changing the mindsets. So of course, on the implementation roadmap, we want leaders to go through Leading SAFE and to get a good foundation in the framework and understand the mindset and principles of SAFE. Plus, taking the Lean Portfolio Management class will help them understand the benefits of funding value streams versus funding projects and the delays that ensue. And I think once they go through that training and they've gone through the exercises within that training, a light bulb starts to go on in which they now see, okay, when we budget our value streams in arts, we know what the cost is for each and every PI. It's a fixed cost based upon the number of people and the time. And that model is a lot more predictable than the project model, which is the project ends when all the scope has been done. And then we're also looking at making sure that we are conforming with the planned cost, that the actual cost meets the planned cost. And that also takes out agility because we're not concerned as much about meeting the adapting to change. We're very focused on, because of the model, on conforming to the plan. So there's just many things that just aren't good about that model, and we describe a lot of that in the LPM course. And I think that's probably the best way to start. And of course, coaching. You can't implement LPM just by taking a course. You also need to get coaching from people who have done that and have been there. I also think it's important to get your chief financial officer, and perhaps you have a person in IT, a finance person, to help them understand. And then lastly, the PMO, or hopefully you'll transform that into a VMO, has a lot of great relationships already with the Agile executive team. So, and they can often speak their language better than anyone else, even in SPC, because they work with these executives all the time. They have those trusted relationships. So those are the three things that I would recommend. Anything you'd like to add to that, Chris?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to it is kind of the first step, or the step after getting the leaders educated. It's getting a really clear vision of what the products are. That you can't organize around value. You can't organize into effective Agile release trains if you don't understand what the products are and how the organization delivers value. And it's often difficult for people within the organization to see that if it's a really siloed organization and you're in a mode of just doing projects, right? Something gets asked for, we do it. You may only be seeing part of the value stream. Even really senior people in the organization may only be seeing part of the value stream. So having that very clear vision of what the products are, how we deliver them, then you can start to build value streams and fund those value streams from that. And that's where we're going to leave it for today.